of the meeting, specifically as it relates to the hearing of the application on tonight's agenda. Each case will be called, and we'll first hear from the staff presentation and recommendations. Following this, the commissioners who serve on the review committee will present their observations and recommendations. At this point, the applicant will have an opportunity to step forward and provide any comments or additional information about the application. Once the applicant has finished, members of the public who wish to provide comments on the current case may do so while noting the time limit of 3 minutes per person. Everyone who steps forward will need to state their name aloud for the record and sign in at the sheet located at the podium and limit their comments to the application at hand. Following any public comment, the applicant may be called back to the podium to rebut any public comments and answer questions that the commission may have. Once all questions have been answered, the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate the application, make a motion, have a discussion, and then vote. If any members of the public would like to speak to general preservation topics and not to any specific application, opportunity is provided during the audience participation and public commentary following the approval of the agenda. Everyone who would like to address the commission may do so and will be asked to state their name aloud for the record and sign in at the front podium. Thank you so much for attending this evening. Your comments are valuable to the commission. I would like to now introduce the commissioners. On my right is Commissioner Epperson, Commissioner White. I'm John Beeson, Chair. We also have Commissioner Keano, Commissioner Rockland, and Commissioner Hall. And we are also represented here by staff Jill Thatcher. All right, and I think we start the call to order. Ms. Thatcher, would you please call roll?
Commissioner Beeson.
Here.
Commissioner Cope. Commissioner Epperson.
Here.
Commissioner Hall.
Here.
Commissioner Quijano.
Here.
Commissioner Rockland.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, moving on to the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda?
Note that we're looking at the green agenda.
Green agenda. All right, hearing and seeing no objection, the agenda is approved as presented. All right, now we're on to the audience participation, which again is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Do we have any members of the public who would like to come forward and speak for the record on general preservation topics?
Hello, my name's Ethel Potts, and I would like to recommend that you learn to use your microphone. I understood what Ms. Thatcher said. She apparently uses hers, but I didn't hear one word you understood. You said.
Mine's red.
I
will turn it to green. How's that? I turned it to green.
Great. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Do I have to reread everything?
I think you're okay.
Okay. Now that my mic is on,
If you have to cough, you can.
any other members of the public like to speak on general preservation topics? Okay. Now we move on to unfinished business. We're on to the hearings. Oh, no, we don't have any unfinished business, right?
Right.
And then we're on to F hearings. F1, which is 512 West William, new garage. Ms. Thatcher.
This 1 3/4 story gable fronter features a shingled second floor, wood lap siding on the first floor, and gable corner returns. The front porch is not original. Previously, it had a full-width front porch, which you could see on Sanborn maps prior to 1948. It's on the north side of West William between 3rd and 4th Street, and the applicant is seeking HTC approval to construct a single-car garage at the northwest corner of the site and extend the driveway. Here's the site. I gave you a little map so that you can understand the layout. It's a long, narrow lot. It's not quite as long as narrow as this. It's a little bit distorted on our computer screens. Next door is this blue lot, which is a University of Michigan parking lot. And here's what it looks like on an aerial. This is the house that we're talking about. Currently has a driveway that goes to the back of the house and then stops. As far as I can tell from all of our aerials and maps and other records, it has never had a garage in the back, though it's had a couple different storage buildings and things back there. This is the U of M lot. At one point there was a house here on the corner, but this strip right here has been used for parking for almost 100 years. You can see that it's a pretty deep lot. It's narrow, it's 37 feet wide, but it's 150 or 60 feet deep. Here's a photo of the driveway coming off of West William Street. Right now, this is where the driveway ends. There's a privacy fence. Obviously, this piece would be taken down for the driveway to be extended. And the homeowner's figuring out where the lot line is, I believe, to see if this fence is in the right place or if it needs to move over a little bit. But here is the inside of that fence. This is where the garage would go. It's a lovely grassed backyard. Here's a picture from the back of the backyard looking forward. The garage would be pretty close to the house. It's 16 feet from that back porch. But there's adequate turning radius there to swing around and get a single car into the garage. And the proposal is for a small structure. The review committee asked me to include this just to show you what's going on in the house next door. They have a single driveway for 2 different properties. I think there's another garage stall over here too. It's like a 3-car garage that's right on the lot line between these 2 houses. These are immediately to the east. Before I get too far, this is that garage right here. And just take a look that we've got U of M parking lot over here. This is a backyard here. This is a very deep backyard without any structures there. There's not really any comparable structures in the backyard here that this would be competing with or detracting from in terms of the historic character of the surrounding neighborhood. Okay, proposed garage is here. The existing paver driveway would stay. A little additional pad here would be added that's concrete to get into the single car garage. 12 feet 8 inches wide and 21 feet 8 inches deep. There are some, it's about as straightforward as you can get with a single car garage. There are some details in the packet. There's some other ones that I'm not showing here. The front features a roll-up garage door. There's a picture of the garage door that I'll show you in a second. It's a Clopay. Cladding is vinyl siding, dark gray to match the color that they're painting the house currently, with aluminum trim. This is the back. There's a person door on the side facing the yard. Has 3 lights. It's a very simple design, and this is the side facing the fence and the parking lot. So again, some details are included in the packet. The door materials are not specified. Really, I can't think of a door material that would not be appropriate on this building. It could be wood, steel, fiberglass, clad, not clad. It would all be fine, I believe. And this is the style of the garage door. They provided some details on in the packet. There's even more. There aren't any windows proposed, just these small panels. Has asphalt shingles on the roof and lap vinyl siding that I do believe is compatible with the siding on the house. The Secretary of Interior standards that best apply are number 2, which says the historic character of the property will be retained and preserved. The removal of distinctive materials or alteration of feature spaces and spatial relationships that characterize a property will be avoided. Number 9 says that new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. Standard 10 says new additions and adjacent or related new construction will be undertaken in such a manner that if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property will be unimpaired. From the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines for building site, recommended is designing new exterior additions to historic buildings or adjacent new construction, which is compatible with the historic character of the site, which preserve the historic relationship between a building or buildings, landscape features, and open space. Also recommended is retaining the historic relationship between buildings, landscape features, and open space. And from the Ann Arbor Historic District Design Guidelines for residential accessory structures, it's not appropriate to introduce new structures or features that are out of scale with the property or the district or are otherwise inappropriate. Since this is a modern building at the back of the lot, staff believes that the proposed materials are appropriate. The garage is small, the design is simple, it's logically sited on the lot, and it won't negatively affect neighboring structures, so staff recommends approval of the application. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So myself and Commissioner Epperson are on the review committee. Want to talk about our report, what we saw?
Sure.
Go first.
Sure, I can go first. I think the report is fairly straightforward. I agree with staff on this proposal. The proposal calls out the existing paver driveway to remain. There's new concrete to be poured further back at the corner of the house. I think the scale and everything is appropriate. I think the only thing that I was a little bit iffy on was it did seem like it'd be fairly close to the house. If there was a picture of the back, they had it staked out. So those four corners. But other than that, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yep, thank you. I probably agree with all that too. I think it's important to kind of note the garage is next door in terms of some scale, massing, and relationship. So that's only one thing we made sure we took a look at on site, and we can also bring that up if we want to look at it again later. But by and large, the report was pretty complete. So would the applicant please come forward, provide your name for the record, and please sign in. And if you have anything to add to the staff report to the review committee, please do so. Don't forget to state your name and sign in and stuff.
My name is Brian Powers. I'm with Kingdom Construction, representing the homeowner. I guess a couple just quick comments was that there was mention that possibly the gate would be removed. The intention is to try to remain to keep that gate. The one side is small enough where the angle would still allow for it to open. So that's our intention. And then also the homeowner would be fine with moving the garage further back if that's what you guys deem appropriate from the house as well. And then I'm here to answer any questions. And the homeowner is also present if she needed to come up and speak as well.
All right, commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Go ahead.
I also had a question on the garage location, so maybe we can address that in a sec. And then also just around the base of the garage, we've got vinyl siding coming down to some foundation wall, I imagine, or is the vinyl coming all the way down to grade?
Yep, the vinyl would come down to the grade.
Okay.
There would be a course of block at the very bottom that the wall would rest on, that the
Right.
siding would come down and overlap.
Okay.
Any other questions?
The back photo, maybe I missed it in the application, the back photo of the house shows kind of a shed roof and steps coming down. That doesn't show up in the site plan. What's the intent?
The back porch
Yeah.
is staying.
Staying. Okay.
Mhm.
So if I'm looking in this photo, that dark spot, Jill, that's the front of, is that a marker representing
Yeah.
the front of the?
Yes, that's the front corner of the garage.
So,
So where is that relative to, how far is that from the first step?
That marker is about 16 feet from the back of the house. So it's about, from the steps, I think it's about 5 feet out.
so from that marker to the northwest corner of the house, you can see there's a direct line, and it barely touches the corner of that step.
Okay,
See that?
yeah,
That's basically what we noticed.
okay.
So it'd be like driveway right up along the side of the stair.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Any questions out there? All right, moving on to the public hearing. Are there members of the public who would like to speak on this agenda item? All right, seeing none, and then I can now close the public hearing portion of the application. The applicant can please be seated. You already did, good. Would any commissioners like to make a motion on this application? All right, Commissioner Hall.
I move that the commission issue a certificate of appropriateness for the application at 512 West William Street, a contributing property in the Old West Side Historic District, to construct a single-story garage as proposed. The work is compatible in exterior design arrangement materials in relationship to the house and the surrounding area, and meets the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation and guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings, in particular standards 2, 9, and 10, and guidelines for building site, as well as Ann Arbor Historic District design guidelines, particularly as they pertain to residential accessory structures.
Support.
Seconded by Commissioner White. Is there discussion on the motion? Anyone? Commissioner Rockland?
My only concern is the location of the garage
Yep.
to the house.
Would be
So,
mine too.
I guess there's two things I can think of. One is just thinking of massing and scale, and just there will be some tension with the two the house and the garage that close, it's, I don't know, maybe that's the intent. But I just feel like, especially sitting out on the back porch or maybe even the backyard, it's just gonna feel tight. That's one thing, and then the other thing is, it just looks like it's gonna be difficult to back your car out, but it depends what kind of car you have, and it depends what you're comfortable doing. So, you know, the second thing is really maybe the lesser of the two issues, but, you know, it is a historic resource, that back corner of the house, and on a snowy morning, it might be in danger. I'm really not proposing that, but I really do think that, yeah, a couple feet would help. Would help me approve the application.
Is there a rear yard setback?
There is, it's
This yard is
probably
small.
30 feet. There's room to move the garage back and not exceed building coverage, yeah.
Yeah, so I think by and large, I could see it being as appropriate to move the garage further back if need be. Any other comments out there?
I would second,
ahead.
or third, it
Yeah.
seems like
Yeah.
As well.
this request to consider setting this garage further back from the house. That seems like a very sharp angle, getting in and out, and concerned about that back corner of the house, potential damage there, maybe. Especially if they're keeping the fence as well. It seems like a very tight area to navigate. And then if that back stair is to remain, it just feels very cramped.
So do we have to, if we need to amend the motion?
Can we hear from the homeowner maybe?
Oh, yeah.
If
Yeah.
From
they
the
have any
applicant,
ideas
want to
for
come on
this.
up again? And you're new, so you have to state your name and sign it.
Sure. Hi, I'm Erin Zeck.
Okay.
Yeah, so in terms of the question, pulling it back, we'd be absolutely fine to do that. I think the question you raised about feeling cramped is not something we necessarily thought about, and I think that's a really important thing to consider, so I appreciate that. We're willing to move it back a little bit to give a little bit more breathing room to the space, and also make sure that there's not any kind of potential damage as we're going around the corner.
Okay. Now, do we have to amend the motion to be specific or not? Right now, the drawings indicate 15 foot 10 and 11/16, which I doubt someone will measure that, but do we need to change it, or?
Yeah, how should
How far do you think it needs to be from, sorry? How far do you think it needs to be from the back of the house in order to protect it, to make that angle not as sharp?
Yeah, to me, it's also in terms of the relationship with the resource, and moving it as far back as possible from the rear offset would be my take on it.
I would support you in that.
Yeah.
I third that as well.
Is there an alignment with the next door garages that makes sense?
That's true too, I can't tell from here.
No,
Or they're too far away
there's
to,
actually,
There's a big fence
They
in
might be
between
beyond.
too.
they're farther, well, actually, it's
Yeah, there you go.
pretty compatible.
Yeah, it may be a difference of just a couple of feet, but not much.
that edge?
It looks like a car.
Yeah, I don't
width,
think you'd be able to read.
you know.
an
So you can see a
alignment
car,
in there.
yeah, you can see a car width, length of a car,
Mhm.
basically the distance.
About 20 feet.
So right now it's 16. So is that something that could be done staff approval, or do we have to put it in?
I think you need to give me something to go on, some
Oh, okay.
direction here. You could say 20 feet or more, that still meets zoning, and leave it to the discretion of the homeowner and your
Okay.
builder.
Commissioner Hall?
So where am I amending it? Just-
We have to say it at the constructed single-story garage, and at that point, you'd probably add something that.
As proposed, 20 or more feet from the rear setback line? Is that
From the rear
No.
elevation.
rear elevation?
Rear of the porch.
Rear of the
Rear of the
porch,
house.
sorry, yes, rear of the house.
House or
is
porch?
different.
Oh,
There's a difference.
Yeah.
House.
Yeah.
Okay,
House,
House,
okay.
I think house.
20 feet from the house.
Do you have to second?
Support.
Okay.
Seconded by Commissioner White. Any further discussion? You could be seated.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I think we're ready for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes. Yes.
All those opposed, please say no. All right, the motion carries. Your application has been approved, and you will receive written notification from staff. Please note that you must apply for any required building permits from the city before beginning your project. I said building permits, but really all permits. All right, thank you. Next on the hearing list is F2, 321 8th Street. Ms. Thatcher.
This two-story vernacular home features an L-shaped roof, distinctive full-width fieldstone front porch with cobblestone posts and wing walls, wide-board trim beneath the eaves, and on the north wall a red brick chimney and rectangular first-floor bump-out. The property first appears in the 1905 Glenn V. Mills Directory of the City of Ann Arbor as the home of laborer Frank F. Groff and his wife Emma. Emma lived in the house until 1940. On the 1916 Sanborn map, the brick chimney that you see here on the side is not present, and the rear wing has a side porch, which was later enclosed, which I'll show you in a second. It's pretty obvious that this chimney was not original. I don't know when it was installed, but it's just a few inches from a window right here, which would be a strange place to build it if it were original. This is a very cool house. It's got a cut stone foundation, and it's a little bit hard to see here, but the front wall of the house on the ground floor is flush across, and then there's a step back on the second floor here. So there's a little notch out on the second floor that's kind of unique. This is the south elevation. It has an existing porch and stair coming down because the house used to be a duplex. It is no longer a duplex, and part of the proposal is to get rid of these stairs and keep the porch. There's these stairs from another angle. This is the back of the house. This is not an original wall to the house, and let me pull it a little bit here. This rear wing is assumed to be original to the house. It shows up in maps like the 1916 Sanborn that's in the staff report. Then there probably used to be a wall that came straight down here next to the door, because the Sanborn shows a little porch right here. At some point that was filled in, and then at some point it was extended out even farther where this siding that's stripped is visible here. So it's had a couple of alterations on this back corner here. There's a large porch roof that doesn't show up on the Sanborn maps. I don't know when it was added. I don't believe that this foundation, even though it was cut stone, it is cut stone, is from the same time period or the period of significance for the district. It's got a new slab on the top, but I don't believe that the cut stone foundation on the porch is pre-1945. Here's the back wall of that little wing on the back. Has very nice trim, wide-board trim. They've done an excellent paint job on this house recently. It looks like brand new. I even questioned whether they'd re-sided the whole thing, and they hadn't. And it looks great. Walking around the north side of the house, this is the driveway side. Here's the rectangular bump out that I mentioned in the description. Also has a fieldstone foundation. Behind the bump out is a little modern door enclosure, just sort of a breezeway to get into the door that presumably leads to the basement stairs going down, or the house leading a few steps up. That's pretty typical, though this is modern and pretty not typical. You can see up here on the roof, there's some nice trim up here. They've done even a nice job painting the downspouts and gutters to match the trim, which I always appreciate. Here's the view of the driveway again. A couple of these are the applicant's photos, and a couple of them are from the review committee site visit. There were some vehicles in the garage, and it was kind of hard to take some pictures. So top photo is the complex roof system that's there now. Here's the front porch. Here's that notch out that I mentioned. This is a roof ridge in an L shape. This is the roof ridge on that rear gabled wing. This is the little flat addition porch, and then this is the enclosed part, and then this is the more modern porch roof. We've got the deck on the second floor on the side and the stairs going down, and then a modern deck in the back. So the proposed addition, and we may have to come back to this later to reference it because it's a little bit hard to understand until you've really taken a close look. This addition on the back, which is from the period of significance, would be basically completely removed, though it looks like the foundation would stay in place. A new addition would be put on behind the rectangular bump out, which is right here, and it would extend out a little bit farther and be filled in sort of like this. Actually, I should just be pointing to this. It's right here. And then it swoops back in, and this is a new rear 8 feet on the first floor. And then the second floor causes this new roof ridge that ties into the existing one. Okay, first floor, this is pretty straightforward. Here's the addition on the back, 8 feet deep, and here's the new mudroom. The existing mudroom is right here in this corner. So you can see how this extends out beyond the existing, this is what I was calling the rectangular bump out on the side. Here's a roof plan. The designer, I brought a couple issues to his attention with this roof plan is not quite right, but he was going to bring something new to this meeting to update it. This roof will actually go straight across. It should be boxed in here. And then there's a little bit of roof here on the first floor that's not shown here. I'll get to that in a second when we go to the photographs. Here's the existing rear of the house and the existing north elevation with that little mudroom glassed in thing. This is the rectangular bump out. Existing west elevation is the front, and existing south elevation has the stairs going down and the single-story wing in the back. All right. This says existing west elevation. It's actually the proposed west elevation. You can see the mudroom, how it extends out past the existing by about 2 feet, and the stairs removed. Those are really the only two head-on differences from this angle. On the side of the house, the stairs are now gone. This is the existing wall on existing foundation. This is the one with no paint on part of it. There's a little piece of roof that remains here. And then this second story is all set back slightly from this wall plane. This wasn't obvious when we were out for the review committee, but after staring at it for a really long time, I figured it out. And it'll be a little bit clearer when the designer shows it to you. But it's the second floor wall plane and this new rear 8 feet are the same. And they pop out a little bit from this wall. Pop in.
Yeah.
Yes,
Pushed.
pushed in. And this is flush. This is existing elevation on the side.
And that's where that little roof went over.
Yeah. This is the little roof. It shows up right here. This is the little bit of roof, and here's that popped-in wall plane that I just tried to describe. Back of the house, pretty straightforward. Some double-hung windows that are proportioned correctly that don't copy the narrow windows on the existing house, but will give them lots of nice light and ventilation. This is a historic window that's being retained and worked around, which is appreciated. This is the new mudroom bump out, and it has a door facing the back. And then there's just a little stoop here on the back with a new back door and some stairs leading down, no big deck or anything. On the driveway side, we've got the existing, I'm sorry, this is the existing on the old foundation. Here we've got the new mudroom. Mudroom door will be at grade here. And here we've got the new 8 feet with the different, you can see the change in foundation behind the kitchen. All right, this is a little clearer. This is existing to this point in the house. This is the new mudroom that pops out 2 feet. And then this is the new second floor, and you can see how it cuts back in to the first floor rear addition. This is the south elevation. The deck stays, the stairs go away. Under here, you can just barely see that roof trim. This, unfortunately, this post is right in the way, but this is the existing plane of the wall, and this is the stepped back slightly plane of the wall in addition. Here's the back. See that the mudroom has almost no eave overhang. That's to be able to tie it in with the existing on the bump out here.
That existing roof extends out that way. It's like a big overhang on that.
It's a big overhang, but it would be a good thing to confirm with the designer. I don't think that was dimensioned on the plans. So really, they're not adding a ton of additional floor area. So let me say that more scientifically. The existing footprint is 901 square feet. The proposed is 1166, which is an increase of 34%. So they're adding on 34% of the footprint of the house. Everything that's there now is presumed to be from the period of significance, except for that back porch, which doesn't count toward floor area. The existing house is 1,440 square feet, and the proposed is 2,053. This is a 42.5% increase. So this meets the design guideline that says the addition should exceed neither half of the original building's footprint nor half of the original building's total floor area. And speaking of standards and guidelines, I've already read to you standard number 2, which applies, and 9 and 10. From the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines for additions, recommended is constructing a new addition so that there's the least possible loss of historic materials, so that character-defining features are not obscured, damaged, or destroyed. The question here is whether that rear one-story kitchen wing is a character-defining feature of the house, or if it is something that can be replaced by the new addition. Also recommended is locating the attached exterior addition at the rear or on an inconspicuous side of a historic building and limiting its size and scale in relationship to the historic building. Also recommended is considering the attached exterior addition in terms of the new use and the appearance of other buildings in the historic district or neighborhood. Design for the new work may be contemporary or may reference design motifs from the historic building. This obviously does the latter. From the guidelines for district or neighborhood setting, not recommended is introducing new construction that is visually incompatible or that destroys historic relationships within the setting. The addition is proposed to be clad in 3.5-inch exposure cementitious siding with boral trim. Window and door materials are not specified. Staff has suggested in the motion that approval be conditioned upon the use of wood or clad wood windows, and that a separate staff approval must be applied for the addition's windows and doors. The design proposes trim matching the original house. Because the addition's foundation, cladding, windows, doors, and trim are modern materials that only resemble the original, staff feels that it's acceptable and adequately differentiates the new from the old. For projects that seek to imitate the historic structure, like this one does pretty closely, this is an appropriate approach if all of the work uses non-matching materials, in staff's opinion. I mentioned that the stone foundation is not being removed, which will help define the original footprint of the house. The addition is tall and the second floor is narrow, and its placement between the attached one-car garage on the north and inset 5 feet from the south wall of the house will minimize its visibility from the street. Though the rear wing is original to the house and staff is reluctant to allow it to be completely removed, staff believes that the proposed addition is compatible with the remainder of the house and adequately differentiated. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Epperson and myself, we're on the review committee. Do you want to go again first, or
Sure.
defer? You can defer.
I'll give it a go.
There we go.
So I agree mostly with staff findings. The house is, the exterior for the most part, everything is in really good condition. She stated the siding's in great condition. It looks really nice. They did a really nice job updating. Other than a few things that are in the back where the porch, like this mudroom was kind of tacked on, and then the back porch area that's obviously under some sort of renovation. I would say that it was a little bit difficult to parse through the documents in terms of the addition landing in on the new, or within the existing framework for the drawings that were provided to us. I think it's mostly compatible. I did have some questions, concerns about the mudroom sticking out because there's so many intricacies with the house itself, which I think is part of its character. The way the addition is proposed, I think it makes that a little bit more confusing, and it's not, the addition isn't quite as distinguished from the old as it could be. So I think that would be my, I guess, biggest point of discussion for the commission.
Right. And I'll note for Jill's sake that on A202, they do mention the windows. It says new windows to be aluminum-clad Marvin wood.
Excellent.
I don't know if that's true. The doors are not labeled though. And the fixed window, I don't know if they'll do that in Marvin as well. But, I mean, Marvin does make fixed windows, but it might be easier just to do a fixed wing. And that all might be wood frame based on the mudroom area. It's going to go to the driveway photo. So to address Commissioner Rockland's quick question that popped up, the roof on that pop and bump out would have to extend further in order to match the design that they're intending. And the mudroom, do we have an elevation of the mudroom? There's the existing mudroom, a small little thing put together with storm windows. So it's interestingly fabricated, very resourceful. Do we have one of the rendering of that driveway again? There we go. There we go. So they're pointing out, again, so the roof line would extend all the way further out in order to match with the very little overhang of the mudroom area. Plus, you can also note that the mudroom wouldn't have any raised foundation or anything, so we'll have to get some clarification from the builder on that one. Having wood trim right down on the driveway side would definitely deteriorate this whole mudroom area. However, that's not the historic.
It's boral.
Yeah.
It's boral and cementitious, but still.
Still, yeah. But what else to kind of highlight? Yeah, I think staff went through the south side pretty well, but the bump outs and the different planes, I think that was important to kind of understand, even though we can't really see it in this rendering, just knowing the different planes. Commissioner Epperson and myself were at first concerned that the plane was going to be all, the same plane was going to all the way go across on the south side, and it does step back, so stepping back is a good thing to help differentiate. But that's it, I think, from my end. I'll move on. Would the applicant please come forward, provide your name for the record, and please sign in. And if you have anything to add to the staff report or the review committee reports, please do so.
Hello, my name's Nick Dury. I'm the builder and the designer, and I do have some other drawings that will help you. So you can't all see the drawings, but I'll start by even just listening to you guys try to understand this plan. I get a little confused, and I've been drawing it for months. So my intention was to respect the original building. the bump out for the garage as drawn in that rendering, the mudroom, yeah, the mudroom, we aren't enlarging the overhang for of that existing bump out on the garage. That is, it's going to have to step back and hit that. We made it wide enough for the door, but I don't do the CAD drawings. My intern does. And I talked to him numerous times, and on other drawings it was there, but it does go back maybe a foot, and then...
That would be accurate in terms of the roof plan, showing that jump back?
Yes.
Okay.
More accurate.
So Commissioners A102 might have a more, yep, that one.
And
A103?
Oh, I have 102 in mine. I only have 101 and 102.
It's 103 on the big one.
Oh, and the new one.
The new one, it's
This is
103.
existing here.
yeah, that's the existing.
This is new.
That's the new,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's clear.
thank you. And the depth of that bump out came from the need for the door to go towards the backyard. So he got a 2.8 door in there, and that's as wide as it's going to get. Another detail you asked questions about was how the siding came down to the concrete. There will be the 8 inches clearance. It's going to be a poured-on grade insulated slab, so for the mudroom there, and that'll be towed up enough to keep the siding out of the driveway salt and all. And the other immediate question on the south side, the roof was omitted, but we lined the whole addition up with the existing foundation for the east-facing part of that house. So that drawing I brought shows that roof dotted in there, or in the plan.
Nick, I had a question.
Yeah.
The existing rear of the house, the addition that's part of the period of significance, is that a cathedral ceiling existing one story, or is there a second story to
No,
that?
it's their kitchen
Yeah.
on that floor, and we're not actually scraping the first floor of that. We're kind of encapsulating it.
Okay.
Because their kitchen's in good shape.
Right.
And above it is a little teeny attic that I
Okay.
can crawl in.
Okay.
And,
I was wondering, I saw a window up there,
Yeah.
it's an attic space.
yeah,
Okay.
you can't, the kids play in it now.
Oh, okay.
And the whole thing, this whole job started was looking at that back porch, which is, you can see in that picture, kind of falling apart. They wanted to enclose it or something, but they heat it, and it just wasn't meeting I can't heat a porch with a massive concrete slab. So they have been restoring the house immaculately to the point of having that company that comes and restores the double hung windows for $800 each. And they're restoring the existing double hung windows to keep the glass and doing all the painting, and they got to the back there and just, they had kids and then they froze. So, but now their kids are getting bigger, so we need to get a bit more space, and that's where this project came. And so basically they asked me to expand the kitchen, get a better mudroom, and a master bedroom. And we went back and forth with Jill several times at this downstairs, just at the desk, and she helped me steer my way towards not having planes that just destroyed the old, but having it step back and keep that. And we got to the point where we had a taller roof, but that was considered, it was going above the original ridge. So we shortened the windows and the walls in the bedroom down to 6.5 feet or so on the ends to get it to come down so that it doesn't poke up. And I wanted all the fascia to continue, but actually it's probably better this way because it distinguishes the new fascia and soffit, even though they're going to be built more or less the same. It distinguishes it from the old and the new.
All right, Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I have one question.
Go ahead.
Can we see a picture of the west? Like, looking down the driveway, you had it up there, there one, the back one. So that window that's being obscured by the chimney is to remain, is that correct?
Correct, we're not even touching that part of the building.
Yeah, and I just, it doesn't show up on any of the drawings, it doesn't show up on any of the renderings, I just didn't know if that was.
there, you know? Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, it's a just clarification.
All right, any other questions? All right, moving on to the public hearing. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this agenda item? All right, I will now close the public hearing portion of the application. The applicant may please be seated. Thank you. Would any commissioner like to make a motion on this application? Commissioner Rucker.
I move that the commission issue a certificate of appropriateness for the application at 321 8th Street, a contributing property in the Old West Side Historic District, to construct a 2-story rear addition on the following conditions. A staff approval is applied for and received for windows on the addition that are wood or wood clad. Wait a second.
You can just take that, you can just take that
I'm
out.
taking that out.
No conditions.
Scratch that. Are there other conditions, though, that I need to
Door,
read on?
should the doors stay in?
I don't, the door's not in there, and I don't think it should be. Oh, it says
In
addition
addition
doors.
doors.
It's in the motion.
Because the doors aren't called out.
Okay, so I'm scratching windows and yeah, okay. Received for addition doors, both of which meet the Ann Arbor, and addition doors that meet the Ann Arbor Historic District design guidelines. The work as conditioned is compatible in exterior design, arrangement, materials, and relationship to the house and the surrounding area, and meets the City of Ann Arbor Historic District design guidelines for all additions and the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation and guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings, in particular standards 2, 9, and 10, and the guidelines for new additions, district or neighborhood setting, building site, and windows.
Support.
Seconded by Commissioner White. Is there any further discussion? I think I'd like to bring up the additional mudroom bump out with, as Commissioner Epperson brought up in her site visit discussion. So can we go to the rendering that shows that one again? That's like all the other side of the slides now, isn't it? Yeah, so it does kind of present a different mass that punches out beyond the historic portion of the home. I'm also worried that, about the fact that it has very little overhang, so it really does stand out on that view. I think the whole rest of the application does follow up really well with all the guidelines, particularly standards 9 and standards 2, and the fact that it meets all of our design guidelines in terms of making sure that it's set back, that it's on an inconspicuous elevation, all those other things, and that the new addition is neither looming but fits within the size, scale, and relationship. My only area that I am questioning the size, scale, and relationship is that mudroom. And in order to kind of change all that, I could see that they would have to rearrange some of the interior floor plans in order to accommodate that. To be able to get that mudroom to still show up, you'd have to move some of the interior kitchen layout as well as the bedroom walls, which may or may not benefit the project either. So I'm kind of torn on that and would like to hear some more discussion on it. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, that's been my sticking point as well.
Yeah.
Is how can we help resolve that protrusion there?
So with the roof being pulled back on the current bump out, that does help retain the current bump out a lot better in terms of its relationship. So I'm wondering what would happen if we did extend the roof over the new bump out to help protect it, but at the same time it's bleeding into the driveway, causing potential, I could see a box truck taking that out pretty easily.
The mudroom door could open onto the driveway instead of onto the,
Flip it around, push the wall back.
if that's the sticking point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, they won't have to redo their whole floor plan, I don't think. If that's the sticking point, I think they could if you're, as long as we're okay with a flush wall there, which I don't know, seemed like the bump out was a sticking point at least mentioned. Would a flush wall also be a sticking point for you there?
I think in order to differentiate it, might have to be set back in some way. Can you go to back to the first slide again on the photo, showing the existing mudroom? I think the existing mudroom is set back. There we go. Oh, no, it's flush.
Barely.
There's a little trim. It might be 2 inches back, but yeah.
So what about if the mudroom actually shifted all the way toward the back? I know that would eliminate one of the windows along the dining room, but if that mudroom footprint, if it came out from the back corner of the house, to the extent that's shown on the plan where it's bumping out, and then it kind of notched back in, so that left a gap in between, I don't know, 3 or 4 foot gap in between the existing to the edge of the new. I don't know, Jill, if you can go to one of the plan views.
So you're saying just to shift this whole
Yeah,
thing
shift it over
to
just
the
so it lines
back,
up with the back.
so that this
Might be-
inset is between the two.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think losing that mudroom, I don't think it will affect, I can't tell how it will affect the second floor. It doesn't look like it will affect the second floor layout.
What do you got?
I just wanted to.
Yeah, so I'm going to read standard 9.
And Commissioner Epperson, how about something like this where instead of shifting it back, I mean, if we're shifting it back, you're okay with the bump out then? It's more about the transition between
Yeah.
the
I'm more okay
existing
with the
and-
bump out, yes.
Yeah, well, what if there was like just a little L shape?
Yep.
You know,
Like a
you're coming
rail?
in from the existing and then coming right out to, can you read my sloppy writing?
No,
there?
I understand what you're saying.
Can I
What
see
would that, I guess I'm trying to think through what that requires,
If
what that
you'd be able
distance
to
would need to be.
read that corner,
Right,
Enough to get a nail gun in and
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it'd be kind of like it is now, where it's almost flush, but not, it's in like, you know, one trim width. But I do agree that reading that corner on that side
I think
would
that
help
should be-
this application.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to highlight the standard number 9, which talks about the new additions, exterior alterations related to new construction should not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall differentiate from the old. That's one that I was like, okay, well, this new addition, the mudroom right up against that bump out, it diminishes the current bump out. I think that's its effect.
exactly.
And the historic, that bump out is kind of what it's a character defining feature of that house, particularly from that view of the driveway. And so adding that mudroom kind of decreases and diminishes that bump out's impact. So by adding a small little, I guess an elbow or something along there to help break it away from that corner, I think would certainly help. You can come back up and speak, Mike.
Didn't quite get what you were talking about, but you're talking about a shadow line between the bump out and or pushing the mudroom back, or?
Show,
Show
this
your-
is,
This is just one idea, but, right, the exterior wall doing that. I mean, one idea was to bring the mudroom all the way back here.
I like this,
we can
do it.
That seems fine.
shadow line,
Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to
see Well- how
the roof works with that, but.
That's the question, is how does the
Yeah.
roof work with that? Yes.
It might just be you cover the whole roof in that whole area.
And then one other point.
lose the edge then?
Our question is, would changing the
You might need a
materials
brick.
out away from cement board, because I looked at about 20 different submittals to get an idea of what I had to do for this, because I haven't been here since 1994, and in front of historic. And I saw that a giraffe project went through recently where they had barn siding, like Fabral steel, vertical, and for a mudroom behind a house on somewhere in the Old West Side. And on Liberty, and I don't know if it got approved, but I thought it was a good idea. And if that was just differentiated with materials and not trying to compete with the clapboard on the house and addition, and I worked with a vertical, some kind of vertical channel siding, painted wood, metal, and for your comment about protecting the wall, there will be a gutter on there. And I don't want to have a door. I try to steer away from doors underneath the drip line. So that's why it's on the other side, because that's going to be their main in and out door. And that's good. They got 3 kids. And there is room for the car there, but swinging doors and then the other door, storm door, will get kind of messy going into the driveway. So I'd either like to do some sort of reveal or a change of siding. Would either of those work? And I could take it to staff later, or.
Yeah, because I'm okay with the reveal portion and material-wise and processing.
I think, I'm trying to remember that project that you referenced, that it was like a metal siding, and
Existing
that.
brick house.
Yeah, but that, I think
was
the
way in the
location
back.
of that was not
Way in
in
the
a
back.
prominent
Yeah.
Yeah.
view.
I don't think
Yeah.
you could have seen it.
Whereas here, this is kind of
Yeah.
one of the main faces of the house, so that's where
Yeah.
the gray
different.
area comes in.
Yeah.
But I think considering some sort of reveal so that the historic property can stand out clearly from this new mudroom,
Yeah.
but still having a functional space that you're constructing
Yeah.
here.
That is a
so.
pretty easy detail to create, and I can work with the fascia and soffit and all that to not muddy it up. Yeah.
Nice pun. Any other comments out there?
Is there any discussion on the question of the existing portion being character defining?
Not yet. The existing portion of you're talking about their whole rear portion? Well, I think in terms of the design guidelines, it follows, we've added, lots of people have gone and done additions on the rear, more inconspicuous elevation. And the reason for that is that this is an inconspicuous elevation that is not as character defining by default. Yeah, and again, I think the setback plane will definitely differentiate from the main resource. You're talking about, really it's identifying that small little portion in the back as a resource in and of itself, and whether or not blowing that away is,
That's the question.
yeah. Well, I think he was saying he's keeping a lot of the interior kitchen in place.
But interior.
I think they're
But
keeping,
the
like
interior
exterior-wise, they're keeping the foundation and that one roof line. There will be some hint of it because of the stucco cut stone
Yeah.
foundation wall and that one drip edge.
But then there's a new foundation wall 8 feet from that, right?
The pair of windows on the back are not of historic proportions. They've been shortened to accommodate a kitchen counter, and this window up here has been replaced, for what it's worth.
It's not in pristine original condition, it has been modified. So if to say it's a character defining feature is maybe difficult since it's not in its original state. If it was in its original state, I feel like I would have to find something to agree that it should be removed. But right now, the way I'm seeing it is it may have been character defining without, but it has been modified.
Yeah, but I would say overall, as a new addition, it's, especially with some of our adjustments, it's being designed in a manner that makes it clear what's historic and what's new, and that the size, scale, and relationship to the historic building, the main mass of the historic building is still being retained and intact and isn't diminishing that historic character. So,
I had one other comment. The new rear addition, the rear-facing addition, on every other elevation, the windows are really nicely balanced, either aligned center or just nicely balanced in proportion, but I feel like on that elevation, the second floor, if I'm remembering correctly, yeah, is perfectly centered in the center, and then on the first floor, it's like really pushed over. And I'm sure there was like an interior design reason for that. And so just if possible, if there's a way to balance that, the reason for interior for having those windows like that, and somehow, if you can, just align the jambs in some way, I think it'll look like more compatible with the rest of the house. That's really an opinion that's not going to affect me one way or another, how I proceed here. But I just thought it's so close to being really compatible, so thank you.
all right, any other further comments?
I'm sorry, I just want to go back
Sure.
to the mudroom briefly, just so that, and I don't mean to just harp on this one thing, but it's still, it is a little bit of a sticking point for me right now if we're just talking about a small shadow line. I think if it's being housed under the same roof as the back addition, and then it's also mostly connected to that existing roof, although I know that there is going to be a setback, I still am not convinced that to me, it still is falling under the massing scale and proportion where it's not just, that mass is pretty noticeable, I think, from that side view and that side elevation, and it's sticking out, and just being a shadow line, I don't think is going to differentiate it enough from that existing bump out because of its depth. I think if it were maybe a little bit shorter and maybe had a different roof line that from the rest of the addition, that might help. I don't want to necessarily say, go with that everything needs to be redesigned, but I think that there needs to be a little bit of a change to that to distinguish
Can we
that
look at a
volume from the
photo
rest.
from the driveway or a 3D model?
Yeah, so that's
I
our
mean, if
big
it's at the same height and-
character-defining view.
I mean, the renderings show a door and then almost a half-height transom above that, the transom above.
Yeah, do we have a height on that mud, how tall is that mudroom, the ceiling? Yeah, it's tough, because it's
It has to
meeting
get to
the
the
other
first
roof.
floor.
Yeah, I know, I kept thinking the same thing, Anna, about if there's a way, not only this break that was sketched by Commissioner Racklin, but if there's a way to break up that roof plane to help differentiate where the addition begins, I think, I don't want to force a whole redesign, but
I think I got the idea.
the historic house
I got
has so
one.
many
Yeah.
pushes and pulls with
Mhm.
planes.
Keep that up. Yeah.
Even
You'll go back one?
at the beginning of the staff report, there was significant note of, on the front facade, how that second floor is set back. So, taking cues from the historic property, being able to break planes and,
I think I could do something where I keep the roof line pitched the way it is underneath the two-bedroom windows, and then when it comes to the fascia over that one corner window, it drops down, and then we just shrink the height of that whole mudroom. And then it will be independent, and the soffits won't try and connect.
So do you think you would be able to, if we suggested a postponement, you'd come back with some new drawings?
To this committee or to staff?
Well, I think you'd have to come back to the committee.
Oh, if that's what I got to do.
I think with all the changes, it would probably be better to show it in new drawings before we could probably even approve it, honestly.
So you won't pass it
there's a lot
as
of
is, though?
change
Yeah,
there.
there's a lot of change. Even if we say, yeah, show us this, show us that, I think having the new drawing would would have to capture it,
Mhm.
and then we would be voting on the drawings in front of us. Now we're kind of going on conjecture until we see,
Do I have to make
revision.
another filing fee for that?
I don't know.
Okay.
The
So-
next meeting is October 11, so I would need... Next meeting is October 11, so I would need drawings by the 4th of October, which is
Yeah,
2 weeks from
okay.
now.
Would you be open to that?
Um,
If you have to.
If I have to, yeah.
Yeah, so how does the rest of the commission feel about this application as it stands now and any modifications? Comments, thoughts?
Well, we can defer.
Okay.
I think I would be more comfortable with that, considering all the modifications we've kind of thrown out.
Suggested and
there,
thrown out there, yeah.
But is it clear to the applicant?
What our direction
we're
is, so when it comes
really-
back, there's no problems.
Yeah,
Sounds like he's been really good working with the staff
Yeah.
on this, so
Yeah.
I'm just guessing he'll
yeah.
probably. Do you agree?
Is that-
Are you comfortable?
You mentioned you
We're
got
good.
this.
I got a good idea.
Yeah, you're gonna-
Okay, yeah.
It's a lot of process for like a little blip, so, you know.
But it can make a big impact on the overall historic nature of the house, which is why I think we're dragging on it most.
The blip is important,
Yeah.
but the process of coming back is.
Yes. We apologize for that. But in terms of procedural, it'd be very difficult to
Okay.
approve on drawings that we don't really know what's going to happen. So. All right, so what do we need to
So,
do?
we need a motion to postpone
All right, I need a motion from someone to postpone this application
to
to the
October 11th.
October 11th meeting.
I'll make a motion that we defer the application till October 11th
For 321.
for October 11th, 2018.
All right. Anyone second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Kiana. All right, now we have to discuss or just move on the vote? I think we're ready to vote on that motion, right?
Yep.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, please say yes.
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 All those opposed, say no. All right, so that motion carries. We will let you work with staff for the next 2 weeks. I think she gave you the deadline, and anything else you need to say on that? No, that's it. Okay, well, thanks for coming tonight. We apologize for your time, but we'll make it work. Okay. Thank you. Next on the order of business is F3, 415 West Washington Street. Ms. Thatcher.
415 West Washington is in the old the old West Side Historic District. The main body is a brick two-story industrial building with limestone facade treatment, including piers dividing the building into multiple bays. It's articulated with a regular fenestration pattern of multi-light steel sash industrial window units. Built for the Michigan Milling Company Cooperage in 1907, the building served the Washtenaw County Road Commission for many years before becoming the operations center for the city's Parks and Recreation Department. The city vacated the buildings and they were boarded in 2007. Interior spaces have been used for storage on a limited basis since then. On May 12 of 2005, a certificate of appropriateness was granted to replace 3 front facade steel windows with steel window units equivalent to the existing. And in October of 2007, a certificate of appropriateness was granted to board the building's windows, install a 10-foot chain link fence, and install a curb cut on West Liberty Street and a parking lot. The site is located on the south side of West Washington Street, immediately west of the railroad tracks and east of 3rd Street. It's across West Washington from the YMCA. The applicant seeks a notice to proceed to demolish all of the buildings on the site. I took a bunch of pictures at the review committee visit, and I'm just going to buzz through them. I believe that all of the review committee members have toured the site this week or for past applications. This is the west side of the building. Along 3rd Street, there is a row of houses abutting this building. You can see that there's not a whole lot of distance here, probably 10 feet or less, between the building and the backyards of these houses. On the rear side of this building, which is the south side, there's a little bit more space. I don't have a good picture of that, but those backyards are on houses on West Liberty Street. And let me see what I've got when I can get to that to explain it a little bit better. Here's the front along West Washington that most people are the most familiar with. This used to be the main entrance to the building. This is the little parking feed the meter spot right across the street from the Y. You can see that the windows are boarded, some on the interior, some on the exterior. They used to have faux lines for grills in them. Those have all pretty much fallen off. There's a little bit of graffiti on the building. There's a parge coat that doesn't match on the second story and the first story. There's more information on the historic structure assessment report on that, but it is failing in a lot of places. There's some steel reinforcement showing in numerous places on the front of the facade, and you can see that this parge is pretty patchy. Now we've swung around into the parking lot off of West Washington. This is the two-story that fronts West Washington. This is what's called the high bay, right behind it. It's if you were to go in this, it's just one large room with a really high ceiling that really big trucks could fit into. You can see that the chimney is in this photograph. There's quite a bit of vegetation growing up between it and the building. I'm not sure what the attachment is there. There's a flight of steps going up to an egress door from the offices on the second floor. Making our way around the building. Now we've gone down those steps. This is the high bay. Watch the blue car. Here's the blue car. This is the west side. Has 3 or 4 more truck bays. And then it swings around to the south side, which is, the west side is more of that concrete with maybe limestone trim, maybe not. And the south side is brick. This row, I believe, was built for a Works Progress Administration project in the 1940s. It also has a whole bunch of bays for vehicles and some windows. There's a better picture of it. Down at the end of this row, which would be the sort of east end, is an open shed that was used for storage of materials. It's all chain link fenced in right now, but it's just 2 floors and it's open on this side facing the parking lot. Around the end is, this is the end of the sheds. This is the Ann Arbor Railroad tracks that are the eastern boundary of the site. You can see off in the distance city apartments, and off this way is the driveway going to West Liberty Street. On the site, underground, is the Allen Creek. It follows the driveway down, and it parallels the railroad tracks. I couldn't tell you exactly if I was standing there, but it's in the approximate location of the current driveway. Here's the railroad tracks that go over West Washington. There's a little concrete railroad siding support here that I'll show you another picture of in a second. There's another view of the chimney so you can see the whole thing. View of the site from the driveway off of West Liberty. It's interesting to note the YMCA across the street. This is also in the Old West Side Historic District. Some of you will remember that about 15 years ago there was a pretty significant fire in the old industrial buildings that used to be on that site. And they were demolished, and this building was approved by the Historic District Commission. Most of you know that the entire building is elevated because of the floodway that is present on this, in this area, both on the Y site and the 415 West Washington site. Here's that. I made Commissioner Rockland stand next to it so you could see how tall it was. This is just the railroad siding support that's still left there. It's kind of cool. In the Reuter report, it noted that there was a siding here and that they would dump stuff from the train cars into the road commission trucks. All right. So the request from this application is for a notice to proceed. A couple of definitions for you. A notice to proceed means written permission to issue a permit for work that is inappropriate and that adversely affects a resource pursuant to a finding under section 8:416. So a notice to proceed is only used when the work is known to be inappropriate under the historic district rules and regulations. And a resource means one or more publicly or privately owned historic or non-historic buildings, structures, sites, objects, features, or open spaces located within a historic district. The resource is the built above-ground structures on this site at 415 West Washington. The notice to proceed in Chapter 103 of City Code says that the HDC may approve work that does not qualify for a certificate of appropriateness, in other words, it's inappropriate, by issuing what is called a notice to proceed. There are only 4 circumstances under which a notice to proceed may be granted, and the city has applied under circumstance D. So that says that work within a historic district shall be permitted through an issuance of a notice to proceed by the commission if any of the following conditions prevail, and if the proposed work can be demonstrated by a finding of the commission to be necessary to substantially improve or correct any of the following conditions. And the condition is that retaining the resource is not in the interest of the majority of the community. So in this case, the HDC must find that the interest of the majority of the community, which is the people of the city of Ann Arbor, it's everybody, it's not just a subset, it's not just the Old West Side, that the interest of the majority of the community in removing the structure outweighs the interest in the reasons stated in the application for the notice to proceed. So when we're going through the application, it spells out 5 different reasons why retaining the resource is not in the best interest of the majority of the community. This is a very short summary. You've all had a chance to take a look at the application, but they are that the cost to stabilize the building would be approximately $2.9 million. That's to stabilize what's there now. That's not to make it habitable or usable. The cost of a total rehabilitation is estimated at $7.4 million. And the city has no planned use for the building, even if it did rehabilitate it. The third one is that commercial flood insurance is capped at $500,000 for a rehab building. So after you put $7.4 million in it, this is saying that you could only get $500,000 of flood insurance. Number 4 is that public funds would have to be spent to list the property for sale, despite these prohibitive rehabilitation costs, which I believe means that it's implying that they probably wouldn't find a buyer anyway with these current conditions in place. And 5th is that the city participates in the FEMA community rating system, and that the rehabilitation of large structures that are significantly out of flood compliance is inconsistent with this FEMA rating system that we have agreed to adhere to. This is a large structure. It is significantly out of flood compliance. And anyone who wanted to go in and rehabilitate the building would have to meet current codes for flood-proofing the building. The flood elevation near the let's see, south side of the site, the West Liberty side of the site, is up to 8 feet deep, and the flood elevation closer to West Washington is around 6 feet deep. So that means that none of the building for that first 8 feet plus a little more could be used. They would have to basically not use the first floor of the building or raise the floor in those big open areas to be above that, and then allow floodwaters to move through the site, through the buildings freely, without being impeded by the building. A few more staff thoughts. The building, just to be clear, is a contributing structure in the Old West Side Historic District. It's included in the original Old West Side Study Committee report and survey, and in the 2007 Old West Side Survey update. So the HDC must determine whether the benefits of removing the building outweigh the benefits of retaining the building in terms of the historic character of the site and historic value of the site. It's important to remember that it's really the historic value of the building that you are weighing against these claims that it's not in the interest of the people because of the state of because of the existence of the flood plain and the cost to rehabilitate it. Those are the two things that you're balancing against each other. You're really not looking at potential uses of the site, the condition of the site, because that's not been called out in the application as, other than the cost to rehabilitate it, obviously. But it's not claiming that it's not a historic structure, and the city has provided in their application 2 reports that say that the site is rehabable. It could be repaired and brought up to code. It's not impossible to do that. So it's a very different claim from the sorts of things that you guys are used to hearing about. And just a couple of other staff observations that are in the staff report. I did confirm with the city building official that there are some kinds of work in historic districts that the building official can waive code requirements for, but they have to be, let's see, what's the term? They would have to be not a distinct life safety hazard, and the flood elevation is such in this area that he said he hasn't seen an application, but is not likely at all to approve work because of this distinct life safety hazard. So the building code probably wouldn't be waived, and that would kick in that current floodplain code that I talked a little bit about. I did do a quick Google search, and commercial excess flood insurance for coverage over $500,000 is available. I don't know what it costs, but you can get it. I saw it for up to $10 million in just a quick search. And I did note in here that the city has allowed the buildings to steadily deteriorate for the 11 years that the complex has been unoccupied. I don't know of much work that's been done to assist the building, to help the building to stabilize it. And that concludes staff's report. I'm happy to help with questions.
All right. All of us have kind of seen the building, but on the degree of the review committee, Commissioner Epperson and myself, we're checking out the building as well. Do you want me to take a stab this time?
Sure.
All right. So, yeah, 11 years, and the building has really started to fall apart pretty badly. What can I tell you that you don't already know? Let's see, we tried to look at its historic context, where that building has been, what it's been used for, how long it's been there, the uses nearby it, its zoning over the years, its scale in relationship to the rest of the neighborhoods, particularly in the sense that it is kind of a 2.5-2-story building with the houses right next door, and how the new Y building has frontage that's 2-3 stories as well that complements it pretty well and then builds up as it goes further away. Again, kind of transitioning away from the district itself. Yeah, okay. Do you have anything else?
No, I think the scale is a good point. It takes up quite a bit of the street frontage in that particular block, which is very close to downtown, of course. It's highly walked, highly trafficked, partially because of the Y, but it's also adjacency to downtown, and I think it something that's very visible in the neighborhood, and I think it does have a for the scale of the complex, or the size of the complex, I think it does have actually a compatible scale to the surroundings.
Yeah, and we'll be discussing further, I'm sure, about the historic attributes. I think some of the things that I saw that were particularly interesting about the building was the W stamping on each corner, the cast-in-place method in which it was built, especially some of the clay tiling used for some of the parapet walls. There was lots of interesting details that certainly merit some historic notions to it, particularly with the steel windows and all those aspects. But in terms of that's primarily the main structure. The subset of buildings that kind of walk around the site are less, I would say, have historic nature to them, particularly the shed on the far south. Really nothing too notable. It's got some, that one right there. It's got some wood framing to it that has some neat planks and boards, but, old wood is interesting, but nothing too historic about it. The brick, if you could go back one photo, Right there. This brickwork was pretty interesting about how the potential layers of it were added and the different colors that were used, and how the parapet may have been added later with the pilasters, all that stuff. But those are in the potential historic reports. But again, nothing too notable that stood out. Good. Okay. Would the applicant please come forward, provide your name for the record, and please sign in. And if you have anything to add to the staff report in the review committee, we'd appreciate it.
Yes, I'm Craig Hupy. I'm the administrator for the public services area. As you were talking about the main building and the windows, pointing out again that what the report said, that it is unlikely those windows could be put back in and still meet the energy requirements of building codes. So that would be a difficulty if we were reusing the building. I'd also like to highlight that the original direction staff was given, was to remove the property. The funding we had was to remove the property from the historic district. We felt that we would be coming to you for the permission to demolish so that the property could stay in the historic district, so that in the future reuse, you folks would have some say into what went back onto that site instead of removing the whole site out of the district. And also to highlight the fact that the site does suffer from between 4.8 and 8.8 or 8.7 feet of flood water, which makes any reuse of the first floors absolutely economically prohibitive. And so that, as the report talked about, any reuse would have to be on the second floors only. It becomes cost prohibitive. Although I realize that's not your consideration as you look at this. But it would be our cost consideration if we were going to do anything with the site.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant, commissioners?
No.
All right. How many? Let's see. Moving on to the public hearing. Are there members of the?
If I can add
Oh,
one
go ahead.
thing.
Go ahead.
The elephant in the room is the chimney. At this point, we have no plans to remove the chimney. We haven't done a structural analysis of it to see whether it could stay or not. And it would depend on probably any proposed reuse, whether that could be integrated into the reuse. And if the chimney were to be removed, I would have to believe with the environmental ethics of the community, we would have to be sensitive to the birds that are using it and finding a suitable relocation structure for them.
All right. Still any comments or questions at this point? All right. All right, I will move on to the public hearing. Are there members of the public who would like to speak on this agenda item? Remembering to please sign in, state your name for the record, limiting your comments to 3 minutes. And I also want to make sure I highlight that the HTC is here to determine whether the stated benefits of the removing of the building outweighs the benefits of retaining the buildings and the historic character on the site. That's what we're slated to do here. Okay.
Okay. My name is Nancy Schiffler. I'm chair of the local Sierra Club group, and I guess I've gotten something of an introduction out of that. We did send a letter yesterday that showed our support for the Audubon Society's approach to this, and I just wanted to add one or two other things in terms of the historical nature of this, of the chimney. It's a brick and mortar, and it does seem to be separate from the rest of the buildings, and so may structurally be able to be saved. The other point historically is it represents something of the evolution of the city, where the habitat for the swifts originally might have been large trees hollowed out. As those were cut down, they found you know, an alternative roosting site in these chimneys that appeared in the city. And in that sense, it represents a transition sort of historically from, you know, a somewhat natural ecosystem to more of an urban ecosystem. And I think could have the potential for, you know, some historical education on that as well. And if this site remains part of the proposed tree line trail, there's some opportunities, I think, for public education in that. So I just wanted to make that point.
Great, thank you. Any other members of the public like to speak?
Commissioners, I'm going to add one thing while Ms. Potts is coming up. There is a packet of public communications on this application. There are 21 emails that were received, 20 are about chimney swifts, and 1 is from the Old West Side Neighborhood Association. And I just want to note that I received no communications in favor of or against the removal of this building.
Interesting.
Yeah.
My name's Ethel Potts, 1014 Elder Boulevard. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Okay. The large building it's been on many agendas, many discussions over time. It's an ideal location for many kinds of things, right down in the middle of town. And for the site not to be used has been very annoying to a lot of us. But could be. But the architecture itself, the building itself, I question whether it's worth saving in any way. It has a historic connection to the industrial past of Ann Arbor, but I do not think its architecture is outstanding for this period or any other period. It's merely an old building. Its only feature is that it's old and that it's falling apart and is in some really bad shape. And we can tell by the estimates for rehabbing it or doing anything with it, just huge estimates, plus the fact that it's in a floodplain. It would be by far too expensive to try to fix, and then you'd still be stuck with the floodplain. And what do you do with the first floor that can't be used because it's apt to flood? So that in itself spoils the area, the building as it is. The chimney has come up as interest because it turns out that the chimney swifts like our chimney. And this may turn out maybe to be sort of an historic symbol of the old industrial West Side, that what's all that's remaining from an old industrial building is a chimney. So I think that might be well worth preserving. I saw nothing in any reports as to the condition of it. It looks as though it's in good condition. It's probably in much better condition than the big old building. But in any case, if it does need rehabbing, I'm sure it'll be a lot less expensive than the huge dollars that are talked about for the building. So what I would like is to have it retained as a symbol of what used to be on the site, the old industrial Ann Arbor that was in the Old West Side. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak? Here we go.
Hi, I'm Rita Mitchell, and I live on the Old West Side, and I walk by this set of buildings all the time, so I'm quite familiar with them. I'm pleased to hear Mr. Hoopy's comment about the chimney, but I would also like to say that I'm sorry that we're at this point where this actually a situation of demolition by neglect by the city as the owner. I think that's sad in terms of being an owner of a building in the city. I agree with what you just heard about the potential for this being a landmark, and I think given that the tree line is a proposal that's going forward, that the retention of the chimney is something that could be a landmark in the area. It could be a draw for people in using the tree line itself. It could be an educational feature about the Swifts and about the industrial history of Ann Arbor, and that we should give those things credence. And also the fact that we have the history, whether we knew it or not, of living with these chimney swifts in this area. And we should respect that as something of an urban ecosystem that we live with. And I'd really like you all to make a decision that would protect the chimney itself by potentially retaining its historic protection, so that in the event that you do make a decision on the rest of the buildings that's different, that at least the chimney could be protected. And if you could take that action, I think it would really help. You got information from the Washtenaw Audubon Society about the chimney swifts. They do not adapt to artificial built sort of chimneys. They just don't. There's no history anywhere in the United States of any large groups of birds using artificial chimney swift roosting sites. So as we are facing a population of these birds that's declining over time because our country is removing nesting areas, or I'm sorry, roosting areas, we could actually help these birds as they migrate, and we need to do that. So I'm asking you to do that. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Are there any other comments? Here we go.
Hello, my name is Ali Ramlawi. I live on the west side, plus I am the Democratic nominee to represent the 5th Ward after November. I'm sorry? Sign in. So I am here to air the concerns of many residents who have emailed me since the news has come out about the proposed demolition at 415 West Washington. So I'm here today to air those same concerns that we just heard about the chimney swifts and the importance in maintaining that.
Oh, sorry, it wasn't reset. Keep going. You're okay.
Yeah, that was a quick 3 minutes.
You get extra.
Compressed time.
So, you know, it is a site that is an eyesore. Many in the community are kind of frustrated and upset with city officials for letting it get into this point of disrepair. It's a contaminated site. It's a part of the urban trail. It's mostly a floodplain and a floodway. It has a lot of difficulties of development in the future. But as we decide what we're going to do with that at a later point, I advocate for the demolition of the site, retaining the chimney in perpetuity as a symbol, as it was eloquently stated by Epi, as a transition of who we were and who we are today. And we're somebody, and we're a community that has values that look to protect the environment as much as we can. And I don't think it would cost much to do that, and I think it would have a great impact on our community, and it reflects our values in the city of Ann Arbor. You know, I just don't think we need to, I know there's going to be some people who may ask for postponement to look into this further. If this is a matter that gets postponed, I urge the body here to make a decision quickly. This has been going on far too long, and the folks in our community would like to see something happen with this sooner rather than later. You know, it's great that the city has decided not to try to take this site out of the historic district and allow for future development to be under the guidelines of the Historic Commission. I think that's really great. I would like to see something that provides great public benefit, and that will come at a later date. I don't know if this is the right time to go into details about that. But yeah, that's what I came here to do, and appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Who do we have next? Hello.
Hi. My name is Laura Ramirez, and I'm an employee, actually the CFO for the Ann Arbor YMCA. And I'm here today to just talk briefly about the safety issues with the building. The question that you asked was, are there any benefits do the benefits to remove outweigh the benefits of keeping? We're definitely in support of removing and feel strongly that they do outweigh the benefits of keeping that building. Ellie, that just spoke earlier, talked about the green space. The Ann Arbor Y is very much in support of that as well. The property that we own college students come and use because of the water preservation and what we've done with creating the wetlands there for the water to flow in. So students actually come as part of it, and just mentioned this week that it's a learning site for them on something that was done correctly. So I'm happy to hear, or we're happy to hear, that we'll be kept in part of the, it will be kept in the historic district. An employee mentioned to me earlier the chimney swift and to save the chimney. I think if you look at the drawings and if you look at that building, approval can be made on demolishing all of the rest of the building, and very easily that piece, I also have a construction background, that piece of chimney should be able to either be reinforced or be kept, and the demolition occurring around it. Additionally, if you've ever been on that site when the swifts come in and out, there are already people that come and park there. They bring their children there to look at that. So I'm sure everyone in this room has seen that occur, especially in peak times during the summer when there's thousands of birds within that chimney. So the other piece is there currently are pieces of that building that are falling onto the sidewalk and falling, and there's high use walking traffic there, and so that is a big concern to move quickly on this decision because of the pieces of, I don't know if it's tile, but frequently when you go into the parking area and onto that sidewalk, you'll see things falling off that building, and so it's a safety concern for the community as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Hello.
My name is Linda Brower. I live on the Old West Side on 3rd Street, and I'm a member of the Y, so I go by this building every day. I just want to voice my support for pretty much everything everybody else has said. So far, I won't reiterate, but I do want to ask you, since the city needs something in writing as a notice to proceed, I ask that if you do give that notice to proceed, that you explicitly say it does not include demolition of the chimney. Thank you.
Thank you. And next.
Hello.
Hi.
Tom Stolberg, 1202 Traver, former HTC member. Good to see a lot of familiar faces
Yes.
and some new faces as well.
Good to see you, Tom.
Thanks, Bob. My first home when I moved back to Ann Arbor is on the Old West Side, and I still own that as a rental property, but I no longer live in the Old West Side. Being on the HCC, I'm one of the people who had a pleasure of touring this site multiple times because people brought before us some ideas. There were some good ideas, but nothing stuck, let's say, whether it was financial reasons or other reasons. I'm going to agree with most of what everybody said so far, with a twist. My twist is simple. For a postponement, short postponement, and the reason is because a lot of the analysis, including the application, is to demolish all. So it's kind of an all or nothing decision as written and as proposed. And I know you could modify that in your proposal, the motion tonight, but I think it's worth taking just maybe a one meeting postponement to really evaluate that as a changing the decision from an all or nothing, which is what the applicant has applied for, to saving one or more structures. And so if we're talking about one structure, say the chimney, which is possibly the Cooper's flue, I'm also kind of want to know exactly what it is. Reading through the old reports, it wasn't quite clear to me, but I think that's what I'm assuming. So we should know more about what it is and the structure and how it was constructed and the feasibility of saving it. I am in favor of saving it if it is feasible. We may want to save that little railroad dead-end bumper. It's not a big deal, but again, it's a piece of character for this site, especially if this site becomes part of the tree line and is park space, that those would be attractive features to include in a park. And one other thing I want to mention too that I think is very important has to do with keeping in the Old West Side versus removing it from the Old West Side. I really don't like that that was held as a threat to the Old West Side. Approve demolition of these buildings or we'll take the site out of the Old West Side. Well, that requires a few steps to accomplish that. It's not an overnight thing to do. So I think the right thing to do is being done, that they've come before you and applied for demolition rather than trying to take this out of the Old West Side. And if you did, for some reason, decide not to vote on demolition, the applicant would have to have a pretty uphill battle, I think, to take it out of the Old West Side Historic District. So I wouldn't see that as a threat in making your decision. The other thing I want to think about on this site, and I'm not going to have time to talk about it much, is stormwater management. The city owns this property, which is in floodplain and floodway, and whatever we do with it should really think about stormwater management. That'll be discussed another time. Thanks.
Perfect time. Anyone else like to speak on this? All right. Oh, okay.
Please.
That was the public hearing part. Would the applicant like to rebut any comments from the public? You can if you want.
First of all, I would like to echo the storm water concerns. That would be very much in the forefront of any redevelopment, how we would handle stormwater. And no, it was not a threat to say we'd take it out of the Old West Side. That was the original council resolution. After discussion with staff, we chose this route instead of taking it out because we feel that's appropriate. More stated for the direction that staff was going. As to the structural stability of the chimney, we have not looked at that. I don't think we could come back with a report in less than in the time to get Jill back on the October 11th meeting. It would have to be later than that, but if that's your desire to have the structural report on the chimney, we'd go forth and do it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I'll close the public hearing.
I'll do the motion.
And the applicant may please be seated. So would any commissioners like to make a motion? We're going to go with Commissioner White. Go for it.
I move that the commission issue a notice to proceed, but does not include the chimney on 415 West Washington Street to demolish all structures except the chimney as proposed. The commission finds that the retention of the resource is not in the interest of the majority of the community, and that proposed demolition is necessary to substantially improve or correct the condition.
Support.
Seconded by Commissioner Hall. All right, is there discussion on the motion? Discussion.
There is none.
Well, I have to give a second or two.
Okay.
I'm sure they're mulling it over.
Okay. I'm gonna go to the restroom while you.
All right. That's why you're in a rush, I see.
Jill? Can you, Jill, can you, you summarize the emails? Like, we heard from the public, but we also heard from the public by email. Can you, you gave the summary, can you give it again, please?
Yes, yes. So we received 21 emails as part of public commentary. They're in your packet behind the green sheet. And 20 of them were about retaining the chimney for the chimney swifts. And one of them was from the Old West Side Association. And I would characterize that one as neutral. But it's there if you want to read it.
Okay. Which one is that? Does it sit by itself? Or is it in the stapled packet? From Rita?
No.
No.
From Christine Brummer, who's the president of the Old West Side Association.
Oh, there it is. It's the backside. Okay.
Third from the end?
Third from.
So I guess I'll just highlight some key notions on this. So in my mind, we have to evaluate this on its historic character, first and foremost. Anything aside from its present value as a habitat, we still have to look at the historic character of the entire structure, the entire resource. And we have to kind of weigh the balance. What is it we have to do? We have to
Determine whether the stated benefits of removing the buildings outweigh the benefits of retaining the buildings and the historic character of the site in relation to the Old West Side Historic District. So, you know, that being said, we have to look at retaining this building for its historic nature, you know, and I think one of the comments that come up still captures really what I said, that this is an old commercial building. It's old, it's got some unique character features to it, but by and large, it doesn't define the historic character of the Old West Side, and it certainly isn't a defining feature in the district itself. So those are my thoughts initially. Any other thoughts I'd like to share on that?
I would agree with you. I don't think it defines the Old West Side, and I just agree with everything you just said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so do I have to wait for Bob, though, right?
Yeah.
In terms of character defining features, I feel like the strongest presence is obviously the street presence. I think it does, you know, when you squint, it really expresses the structural bays, but it just doesn't do much. Like, if there was one more layer than that, it would really be, I think, something of interest. Because I do think it's you know, the way that the bays are laid out right on the street like that, I think it could be, you know, it sort of had potential, but I do feel like the condition of the site, in terms of character defining features, yeah, it's not differentiating itself as a character defining feature in the neighborhood.
Yeah, and I guess I'll add that unfortunately, you know, the chimney swift issue aside, we have to look at the entire resource. And although the chimney is part of this resource, I'm not so sure, you know, again, it's resource as habitat is different than resource as historic nature. So we have to evaluate it based on its historic character. And it's not like this chimney is particularly unique. It wasn't, you know, handcrafted each brick or defined and designed in a really unique way. So looking at the historic resource as a whole, I think, I don't know how the motion as read out includes exclusion of the chimney, which I don't know how that fits in to the overall scheme. Can it stay in there? I just don't know. As a notice to proceed, can we exclude a single item in a notice to proceed?
Right, because it's not, yeah.
Because we have to look at the whole resource.
So I'm looking at this middle bullet here. If you excluded the chimney from the motion the way it's currently proposed, then you have to state why just the chimney historic character is different from the rest of the site.
Yeah, and
Well, no, I would think you wouldn't have to do that. I think what you would do, the problem that you're facing, there has not been an analysis on the chimney. And
There actually has.
The city said that they haven't looked at the chimney.
in terms of the structural analysis.
Structural.
Yeah.
Structural. We don't have an historic report on it.
Yeah, so we don't have a structural report. We don't even have a historical report. It's just that we know it's been there. But, so if we exclude that and they come back for that, I mean, we're saying that that's not on the table. That's all we're saying. This is up and down on the rest of the property and the building. Then if we do that, then if they want to do something with the chimney, they come back and ask us.
Well, that's under the assumption that the chimney does have a historic value.
Well, we don't know. We didn't evaluate it. You went out there, you didn't really evaluate it one way, or did you?
It was a chimney.
That's right, it was a chimney. So right now, since we don't know, and we know that from a nature standpoint that the birds like it, we'll let that stand. I'm just saying we'll let that stand. The people have spoken. And then if the city comes back and says, we want to take it down, and then the people come back and talk to their city council people, and then we'll discuss it at the time. But right now, That's not on the table. I mean, that's the way the motion that I put together. So it's the building and what's on the property.
Yeah, well, I guess, based on what Jill also suggested, is that we have to identify then what is the historic nature of the chimney and why we're excluding the chimney from the notice to
Well, we'll do
proceed.
that, once it happens.
So then as the motion stands, we can't
approve
that,
the motion
approve or
stand-
deny that
Oh, no,
motion.
but what we're saying is, was it done in 1817? Was it whatever things, and we'll discuss that. But right now.
I don't know, would
to
that
the
change anything?
majority, I know, but the majority of the community, I'm saying, doesn't want to spend the money on this building.
Yeah.
And we know that. But we do know that some people, go ahead.
The applicant.
Come on up.
The notice to proceed for demolition is only our first step. Before we could demolish this, we would have to go back to city council for a contract to do it and explain what we're doing.
Yeah.
If your concern is preserving the chimney and not worrying about the historic nature or attribute of the chimney, I would argue that preserving the chimney would be at council at the time that any demolition contract would be going forward. This is, as I said, this is only the first step. We don't have any funding for it. As funding is put forward or a project is developed to remove it, there is going to have to be city council weigh in on what is taken down with the demo contract. So by saying it's not historic and it can come down, doesn't mean it's going to come down. It means we move to the next step and it becomes a discussion at a later date when the demo contract actually goes to council.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on this?
There's some information in the Reuter report about the chimney that Commissioner Rockland was pointing out to me today. There's a description that explains that the chimney was built as the flue for the new boiler room as part of Phase 2 of the north garage. So when the high bay garage was built behind the original two-story sort of office-y building, that chimney was added as a flue to the boiler room. It does appear in a photo from the late 1920s. We don't know exactly when it was constructed, but
It's
it was
included.
it
It's
was
included right now.
it's of the same time period as the rest of the building and the additions.
Okay.
So it's on a par with the rest of the site.
There was an older brick and metal flue that was part of the old, you had the perfect name, Cooper. Yes. That is no longer there. Apparently it was the last thing, according to the report, it was the last thing demolished so that they could fire up the new boiler, and then they got rid of the old boiler.
Okay.
I read the report.
Good job.
I just want to make a comment that while I more or less agree with the other commissioners' statements about the historic character that truly defines the neighborhood is residential, this eastern edge of the district is industrial. That's what defines it. And although majority of the neighborhood is not of that character, it's part of the neighborhood. And whether it's, you know, a pristine building with more ornamentation or an industrial building that was the function of that part of the neighborhood and our history, it should be considered as a benefit or a, you know, a contributing feature and resource in this neighborhood. I don't think it should be disregarded given its, you know, service use. I just wanted to make that statement.
That's valid, particularly since north was pretty much commercial area before the fire, and even further north is currently commercial area. not as industrial, but mostly commercial.
Right, yeah, 'cause you're, even beyond the district, you're
Yeah.
entering along.
Commercial zone. Well, I have to do something here, right? So, I know you want to do that, Bob. But I have a question. So I want to move into a closed session to discuss the written attorney-client privilege. And I would move into that closed session to discuss written attorney-client privilege communication.
So we need a roll call vote.
Roll call vote.
You need 4 votes to move into closed session. Commissioner Beeson?
Yes.
Commissioner Cope is not here. Commissioner Epperson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
Commissioner Quijano?
Yes.
Commissioner Rockland?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
All right, you've entered closed session.
Okay, we're entering our closed session. We'll be back shortly. reread the motion at all, or would that be helpful, or? I'm looking at you, Jill. Do you think we should, or?
Sure.
Okay.
So the current motion under consideration says, I move that the commission issue a notice to proceed that does not include the chimney for the application at 415 West Washington Street to demolish all structures except the chimney, and actually that should be clarified because there are 2 chimneys on the site, as proposed. The commission finds that the retention of the resource is not in the interest of the majority of the community and that the proposed demolition is necessary to substantially improve or correct this condition. Sorry, I interjected there. There's also a chimney on the rear building on the West Liberty side. So you may want to say the chimney near West Washington Street or something like that.
Okay. Near Washington Street. I like that.
Are you officially amending your?
Yeah, I'm officially amending that.
Okay.
To say near
Who
Washington
was seconded?
Street.
Do we have another second? Who seconded? The first
Second.
one? I think it was Commissioner Hall.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, here you go.
Okay, so that's our motion that's on the table right now. And I think what we're looking at then in terms of discussion is that because the chimney is pulled out in the motion, we have to clearly define what the historic nature of the chimney is over the whole rest of the building, over the whole rest of the site. As it says kind of up on the screen, we must determine whether the benefits of removing the building outweigh the benefits of retaining the building in terms of the historic character of the site and the historic value of the site. And the chimney falls in that same grouping of the historic character of the site. So I wanted to make an amendment to remove any mentioning of the chimney in the motion, as it does not pertain to the historic nature of the site, and let the public and city council primarily address the issues of retaining the chimney. But on the historic nature of the chimney, there's nothing unique about it in my mind. To be able to pull it out like that and separate it, I don't think we have grounds to do that. There's no instance in a report that says that this is a highly valued chimney, one of a kind, and rare on its historic nature. Discussion on that? And would Bob be amenable to that and his motion or not?
I'll support it.
Okay. Commissioner Hall, would you second removal of the chimney from the motion?
Second.
All right, discussion on that motion.
Sorry, what are we discussing now?
Removal of the chimney from the motion.
Okay. We're not discussing the historic, okay, we're just.
You can
okay.
discuss the historic too, yeah. The historic nature of the chimney or the historic nature of the site?
The first one.
Okay, yeah. You could discuss whatever you want.
Okay.
Within the context of the application, I would say.
I guess I'm just confused on procedure. So
So-
there was a motion, and then you just amended the motion, and we're talking about the amendment to the motion?
Correct.
Wait a second, maybe what we should do is go back to the original and vote it up or down. The original one that we did, vote it up or down. If it doesn't go, then we have another motion.
We could do that too, right?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Does anyone make sense either way or the other on procedure? No?
We'll vote the first one.
Okay, we'll vote the first one.
Okay, so we're back to,
Didn't
I move that the commission issue a notice to proceed for the application at 415 West Washington Street to demolish all structures except the chimney near West Washington Street as proposed. The commission finds that, I read it wrong. I move that the commission issue a notice to proceed that does not include the chimney near West Washington Street for the application at 415 West Washington Street to demolish all structures except the chimney near West Washington Street as proposed, et cetera.
Okay.
Let's vote.
Is there any further discussion on that? Or are we ready to vote? Or are we ready to vote? Ready to vote? All right. All those in favor of the motion, please say yes.
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 All those opposed, please say no. No.
No.
Let's have a
Do
roll
you
call.
need a roll call?
Now, I'm assuming there'll be another motion after
Yeah.
this, but, okay.
Yeah.
Like either way.
Oh,
Uh,
depends on the
well,
outcome
if
of the
this one
vote.
passes, there won't be any other.
Oh.
So, all right,
There-
Let me take the roll
Okay.
call vote on
This is excluding the chimney.
chimney from the approval of the notice to proceed. Commissioner Beeson,
No.
Commissioner Epperson,
No.
Commissioner Hall,
No.
Commissioner Quijano,
No.
Commissioner Rockland.
I said yes, but I was assuming there would be another motion, so I'm saying no now.
Okay. Commissioner White.
Yes.
All right. That motion fails.
Okay, and would anyone like to make a second motion? Any commissioner?
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Commissioner White.
Had to dig it out again, just
Yeah,
a
that's
second. I move that the commission issue a notice to proceed for the application at 415 West Washington Street to demolish all structure as proposed. The commission finds that the retention of the resource is not in the interest of the majority of the community, and that the proposed demolition is necessary to substantially improve or correct this condition.
Any second? Second by Commissioner Epperson. All right, discussion on the motion. Pending. No further discussion? Ready for a vote? All those in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, please say no. All right. The motion carries. Your application has been approved, and you will receive written notification from staff. Please note that if you must apply for any required permits for the city before beginning your project. All right, thank you. All right, next on the agenda, we have new business G, proposed ordinance amendment, which I think is in our packets.
This is in the green packet. It is right behind the agenda sheet. So, a little bit of background on this. The petitioners for the Glen project got their HDC approval 2 years and 10 months ago, and then it took them almost 2 years to get through the site plan approval process. And they looked up the Historic Preservation Code for how long our approvals were good for, and noted that it's 3 years. And we have no mechanism to extend that time period. So they would have to effectively reapply with exactly the same application in order to get another 3-year term for their petition. So we, mentally applied this to a couple other projects that are ongoing, and it is a problem, and it does need to be fixed somehow. So in the new Unified Development Code, there was a similar sort of problem about extensions of approvals. And this is structured in sort of the same way. It's not exactly the same because it's tailored to the Historic Preservation Ordinance. But what's being proposed here is that if you get a certificate of appropriateness from the commission, it's good for 3 years. And if you pull a permit in that time, can't find it?
I can't find mine.
Oh, okay.
Keep going
Here.
now.
If you pull a permit in that time, it will automatically be extended another 3 years. So if you start building your hotel, if you start building your house, within that 3-year time period, it can just be ongoing for another 3 years. If you haven't pulled a permit, haven't started doing anything on the site yet, then you can apply for a staff approval for another 3-year term, as long as there's no change to the facts. It's the same project, working under the same code, same parameters, same site conditions, all of those things. Then I can administratively extend it on your behalf for another 3 years. But they have to come in and ask for it. And it has to be within the 3-year time period. Administrative approvals, I will not extend. They're good for 3 years. You can come back in for a new, garage door permit if you don't get the work done in 3 years. No extensions there. So the language is on the back here. It's a new number 4 in code. And yeah, I would appreciate if you could consider this and give me a motion if you think it's appropriate. And technically, this is being proposed by staff with Chris Frost's assistance in writing it. And I hate to say it, but it doesn't need your approval. But I obviously don't want to take it to council without your approval.
That's good.
So there is a
good to have our
proposed motion of
I
support.
make a motion that the notice to proceed for the Ann Arbor City Code Section 8:4161D.
Where are you reading, Bob?
I'm reading the title of the subject matter here.
No.
That's the name of the notice to proceed. Is that what you're changing?
No.
She's talking about the ordinance to amend section 8.
I'm
I
looking
couldn't
at
find
the,
my sheet either, but this is the sheet.
Yeah, down at the bottom there.
That was just.
Is there anything?
I don't even have this one.
Do you want me to read it? Bob, do you have it?
Yeah, go
All
ahead.
right, good.
Go ahead. I don't even have this.
All right. I move that the proposed amendments to Section 8:413 issuance of permits to Chapter 103 Historic Preservation of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor are appropriate, and the Historic District Commission recommends that City Council approve them.
Second. Second by Commissioner Beeson.
Well done.
All right, any discussion on it? I think you had noted this to me before, but basically, when somebody would come in anyway with the same application, you'd say something along the lines of, we'd have to approve it no matter what if there's been no change, right?
Right.
So this just allows them to not have to reapply. Yeah.
I'm glad you qualified it with the change in the facts rule, so that if something does change and they're really dragging
Yeah.
their feet, they'll have to change their handrail or whatever. So, yeah. Good. That's nice. Do you anticipate any unintended consequences from this rule change?
I don't.
Difficult to predict.
Longer projects,
Oh,
maybe,
oh.
but yeah.
I don't think so.
Half-built something.
Yeah.
I
don't think the
That's the
HTC is
minority, I
really
think, yeah.
moving people along.
Yeah.
It's the site plan that does that right now.
Yeah. All right, further discussion, or are we ready to vote?
Yes.
I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say yes.
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 All those opposed, please say no. The motion carries. The application, send the application. It's been approved. All right, then we're on to H, approval of the minutes. In front of you, you have minutes from August 16th. Are there any
Again, they're behind the
changes?
green sheet. You need these?
Yeah, no,
You got it? Okay, okay.
I found the minutes. Okay. Hearing and seeing no objection, the minutes are approved as presented. Sounds good? On to I, reports from commissioners and commission proposed business. Do we have anything in there?
Nope.
All right.
Unless one of you have a report.
On to J, assignments, review committee is Monday. This is a noon meeting, October 8th.
Yeah, we're back to noon for the next
It's a
6
new
months.
meeting. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm in. I can do it.
All right, Dave's in.
Let me just check, but October 8th.
October 8th, Columbus
Indigenous
Day.
Peoples' Day.
Yes.
Yeah, I can do it. Noon.
All right, anybody else?
I could do it too.
All right, thank you, John and Dave. Reports from staff?
I'm typing in, so I don't
Okay.
forget. If I
So that's-
don't type this in, you're going to be emailing me, asking me where I am. Reports from staff. K1, August 2017 HTC Staff Activities Report is in front of you too.
Yep, it's
There it
in
is.
there.
It is.
Yeah, I got it.
Should be in the pink packet, the original
It's a
packet.
very thin two-pager.
Yeah. We've got lots of furnaces, ACs, a couple picket fences. Roof deck railing, yeah, that was to replace one that had been there previously, a long time ago, but.
Issue there.
There's one, the Ann Arbor Art Association, at the bottom, 18188, glass replacement for renovation of vestibule. That's a kind of an interesting project. They're removing a ceiling of a vestibule that is sort of internal and just opening it up to the sky, so I was able to staff approve it because of the way it's configured, but they do want to put better, more energy-efficient glass in parts of the storefront there, so that's a good thing.
That's the art center?
Art center, yeah, yeah. Anything else you have questions about? I'm happy to answer them.
Nope. Anyone? Nope. You don't need to do anything for that one?
Nope.
All right, concerns of commissioners? Any concerns?
There's a question. Whatever happened with the roof material?
Oh,
It was like,
Oh, on
the rental
North
property.
State, the
Yeah.
mansard roof?
Yeah, they came with some samples and asked
Yes,
us-
yes, so
What's
they,
going on there?
they came back in with proposed materials that I ran by the officers for a second opinion on making sure that I remembered the meeting, that working session,
Mhm.
the way that they did. And they have revised their application a couple more times. They are now proposing imitation wood shingles that match the historic wood shingles that they found underneath the metal siding.
Wow,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, which is different from the last time I communicated with you guys because they wanted imitation slate, which has no relationship to the wood, and there were differing
imitation.
viewpoints on that, but,
It's all
but
imitation to me.
it's all imitation. Yeah, yeah, so that's where we are. We've brought them around to something
Imitation
that
of
looks
wood.
like the historic material, but is a non-original material.
And so is that a staff?
It will be a staff approval,
Because it
with
looks
with
like
the
the-
blessing of the officers, yes.
So they found wood underneath the metal?
Yeah.
Wow.
You must
Oh,
not have been
maybe.
here
I
when they
wasn't
took
at that
pictures.
one.
Okay. If I stumble across them, I'll send you the pictures.
Okay,
Yeah, they
So
peeled it
working
up, and there
session.
were just big, flat
wasn't there.
wood shingles.
okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Was it an impromptu?
Well, no, it
They
was
didn't-
kind of a surprise.
It was a surprise working session.
Well,
Was
it
it?
was my fault that it was a surprise.
Question?
It was,
Oh, it was? I don't know.
it was,
I just
yeah,
remember.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
All right, any other communications or concerns? Then on to communications, various communications to the HDC?
None.
Hearing none. All right, without objection and something, I hereby adjourn the, what is it? I have a script somewhere in here. I'll read to the script. There being no further business, and without objection, I adjourn the September 20th, 2018 Ann Arbor Historic District Commission meeting.